designer, but what it's like to be a design student. So we have both, because of summer Springboard, both commuters and residential students are going to be able to experience life in New York City. Pre-College 1. So as it was mentioned when we were introduced, there's Pre-College 1 and Pre-College 2. If you've been thinking about studying interior design the whole time you're sitting in art class or biology class or a history class, Pre-College 1 is for you. We teach in pre-college the basics of drafting, color, materials, selecting furniture, understanding the needs of a client, you name it. But we start with the thing that's closest to home, which is a home. So most of us who go into interior design, no matter how old you are, have started by pushing around furniture in our bedroom, painting the walls a different color. I can remember painting my walls navy blue, and suddenly my little tiny room just expanded. It became amazing. And paint is pretty cheap. So that's the kind of thing that a budding interior designer is just doing naturally. And as you can see in this slide, you can see the work of a previous pre-college student. They're working on a 1-bedroom apartment. They're learning all about furniture, how people move through space, the psychology of interiors. And plus they're getting to see New York City. Here's a little bit of what it looks like at our school. It's pretty busy and pretty fun. So this is where you're going to find people just like you. And when I say that, I mean that designers they're both born and made, but they're thinking in a different way than almost everyone around them. They might be great academically, or they might be challenged academically. It doesn't matter, because when it comes to art, when it comes to color, when it comes to understanding people, this is where designers excel. In the top corner, you can see one of the world's experts in textiles. His name is Scott Kravitz. He's from Kravitz Fabrics and Furniture. And he actually goes all around the world collecting ancient textiles from every culture, and then his company reinterprets them for the modern world. On the right, you can see a big image of students putting together their conceptual color wheel as a team. So everywhere around us are beautiful colors. You know, they say that you can find every color in nature, and in nature, every color is beautiful. And these students start making collages from bits and pieces of magazine pictures, pencils, markers, you name it, to make a color wheel that's dynamic and exciting, and they're working as a team. And the bottom left is our final day presentation. We invite outside people, sometimes parents and friends can come. And in the center, you see my green dot, I'm not sure you do, is Francisco de Leon, and he is the director of our pre-college program. So one of the great things about New York School of Interior Design is through our program, you'll also earn 1 college credit, both for Pre-College 1 and Pre-College 2. Pre-College 2 is very much the same as Pre-College 1, but it builds on the skills. And instead of doing another residential project, you do a hotel. So a hotel and a restaurant. And you might think, well, how am I ever going to do that? But believe it or not, in 2 weeks, people do amazing things. Throughout the first 2 weeks and the second 2 weeks, students will study color, as I mentioned. They'll learn how to do basic drafting. They'll come to understand standard sizes of furniture and the right ways to lay out a room. They'll understand fabric. They'll go to showrooms in downtown in Soho. They might go to a museum and do sketching. But one thing is for sure, they are going to be immersed, truly immersed in New York City. On the top right, you can see they're in a tile showroom. It's called Sitges Tile. And these are glass mosaic tiles based on an ancient Italian glass technology. They find this glass mosaic technology in ancient Rome and ancient Egypt. And this is for modern day spaces. And these students are going to be given bags of tile and asked to make their own mosaic. We do believe in sketching, but you don't have to worry if you can't draw, because design is actually an applied art. It means you can learn it. You don't have to worry if every person you draw now is a stick figure, or you drew a foot and it doesn't look like a foot. It doesn't matter at all. You can't get worse at drawing, you can only get better, and you will. So this is more of a description of the pre-college too. So they'll be working on a hospitality space like a hotel lobby or a small cafe or both. And over the course of those 2 weeks, they will visit some of the greatest, hippest hotels in New York City. They'll go to some restaurants and cafes, and they'll be asked to choose a client and create a space for that client. So for example, you might choose a brand that you know and love, like Lego. And Lego, until recently, didn't have any kind of hotel named after it. Now they have a whole amusement park in upstate New York. But it's the idea that the Lego brand, as soon as I say Lego, I'm sure you can see a bright yellow tile. And in fact, when the hotel for Legoland was designed, it was designed with that incredible brand identity in mind. You might have another brand identity. Maybe it's a line of makeup. Maybe it's a clothing line, anything. And if you had to imagine one day somebody sat up and said, let's make a cafe with this as our theme, or let's make a hotel with this as our theme, you could do it. It's pretty fun when that happens. And here again are students in our lower level at the New York School of Interior Design. It's our Whiten Student Center. And they're watching Francisco do a presentation on the color wheel, but it's a very dynamic experience. It's how the colors interact. One thing that's great about studying design, as opposed to sort of something more theoretical, is that everything is hands-on. So design is all about hands-on learning. It's a career exploration. You will definitely meet experts in your field. You'll meet designers, you'll meet artists, you'll meet architects, you'll meet people that, for instance, run those showrooms, like the tile showroom, or Scott that, goes around the world seeking fabrics. But you'll find your own place, or start to find your own place in the world of design by actually doing a design. And of course, it is in the heart of New York City. There are lots of wonderful cities in the Springboard roster of places to study, but I have to say, if you're a designer, there's no place like New York. It's just, every corner is something new to look at. If you've never been to New York, I wouldn't worry in the slightest. You'll be well taken care of. You'll be perfectly safe all the time. But you'll also have that little bit of independence that will let you explore a new food or a new shop or a new street with a friend in a safe way. It's going to be great. And I think that is the end of our presentation. And if anybody has a question, I'm happy to ask. Answer.
Just to add a few details about the housing. So the housing will be at Fordham University, which is suite style. So it would be 2 students per room, and then there's a common living room area, a small kitchen with a fridge, and then a private bathroom for all the students that are in the suite. Some suites are 2 bedrooms, some are 3.
Hi, I have a question. I'm from Romania. So I would really like to join this course because it's one of my passions I have in my free time. But I would like to know if I could, what is the paper process like to get in New York? Because I know it's quite difficult because I'm not from the US.
Yep. So we actually have a ton of international students that join our program each year. Last year at Fordham, we had in our session 30 of the students were all from different countries. So our online process is the same. So you would just fill out an online application through the Summer Springboard website, and then we have some essay questions. We ask why you're interested. Then you would just fill in all the general information, but it's the same process, and then there's a fee that you'd pay as well. Nothing really different for our international students. Sometimes we do request an interview just to make sure that you'll be able to understand the classes.
But Alexia, I will tell you that I had a student last semester from Romania in my freshman year design studio, and she was wonderful. You have a great history of design in your country.
Thank you. And also about the online application, I know that this is something more like in the art side of what you would normally study. Do you also require some kind of design or example of what we're thinking of?
We don't require anything at New York School of Interior Design. We're going to take you and your native gifts and who you are, and we're going to teach you what you want to know.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope to see you.
Yes, and Alexia, you might be a perfect person to do the interior design 1 and 2, the pre-college 1 and 2, if you wanted to continue to learn more about interior design, continue on to the second portion.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of my passions, and I think it would be really nice to transform this maybe into a career or something like that, because it's something I find very easy to do and to think about.
That's a good indicator.
Thank you.
If anyone else have questions too, you could just write it in the chat if your volume isn't working, or you can speak out loud.
So I can tell you a little bit about New York School of Interior Design. It's one of the oldest schools of interior design in the country, in the US, and it's been around since 1916, so a long time, but it's always been focused on interior design. And the people that come here and that teach here, and the students that you'll be with, the students in particular are exploring what they want to do with their lives, but they already know what they love. Interior design is the kind of thing that applies to many, many other interests. So you might be thinking, well, should I study interior design if I really want to be a doctor? But in fact, you'd be very surprised how many people in other professions understand how important it is to understand the importance of space, of cleanliness, of a well-functioning interior. You might think about a chef in a kitchen. That kitchen has to be just right for that chef to turn out the most wonderful food in the world, or even in a diner or a deli for it to work without people getting hurt or bumping into each other. And it's that kind of thing that interior design encompasses, which is basically almost everything, plus all of the art side of it. Any other questions?
I know iPhone, you joined a little late, so if you have any questions, you could pop them right in the chat. We're going to do this session again, so you could always join for a second time to hear the information from the beginning. And then for Alexia, you had asked about the international requirements. So for TOEFL, we're looking for 490 on paper test or 60 on the IBT test. And then I mentioned before, there is a English proficiency interview that's done over the phone.
But I don't think Alexia would have any problem.
Thank you so much. I mean, you talked about how we discover our passions through doing something else. I'm actually really interested in filmmaking, and recently I made a movie, and I had to design a room in order to send the message about how the person was, and I found that really interesting to do.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm teaching this semester also, and these are advanced students, but I still said to them, you know, you can design a room, but then you leave, and that room says something to everybody that comes into it, or that space. And you're the designer. You decide first what you want it to say, then you design it to say that, But then after that, it kind of has a life of its own, right? It tells you, that's why a police station is going to be different than a ballroom, right? And I'm interested in knowing, what was your movie about and what was the design?
So it was something really fun. It was the room of the guy really interested in films as well. And one of the challenges was to find movie posters in my city. So I had to go to different cinemas and talk with people. And I actually met the director of a cinema, and then we transferred his room at home. We made the room in the location we filmed inspired by his room, because we love that it was really messy, but it was still very colorful and organized. It wasn't like messy, it was just a lot of color, and I love color, especially pink.
Right. The color is like the door in for so many of us. For me, it always was. I could spend hours standing in front of a paint, at a paint store, looking at all the different colors. Yeah, so that's exciting. That's interesting. That's great that you talked to him. He's, in a way, a real client, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So do you go, what grade are you in? What year are you in school?
I'm in 11th grade in Romania. And I'm studying here. High schools are pretty different. You go to study science, or I study philology. So I study more like history and geography and main language as well.
The humanities, like arts.
Yes, exactly. Humanities, that was the word.
But I like the word philology much better.
This is how we call it in Romanian. We call it philologie, so that's why.
That sounds like a wonderful thing to be studying. And the other side of it is, in case your family has questions, sometimes, they want to steer students away from art and into another kind of profession. And there's lots of science in design as well. Lots of science, which is the way it should be, right? It shouldn't just be like, I want it, therefore it's this. It's really, like I said, an applied art where students understand psychology, they understand materials, they understand even things like sustainability and air quality, and then they design for real people, That's very satisfying.
I also really enjoy history, and this is why I think I would absolutely like to study interior design, because it's also about the history, and it's about how it's adapting how we evolve as persons and as a society. It will never be the same, I don't know, the same necessities we have. This is why.
Right, things are changing all the time, and designing based on, with knowing the past but thinking about the future is exactly right. Good for you.
Thank you.
Kolda, are you there?
Yeah.
Hi, do you have a question for me?
No, I don't have any questions right now.
Okay. One thing I can tell you, you might not have a question, but I can answer a question anyway. We have, within our program, you would meet anywhere up to 7 individual instructors, probably more. And each one of those is a practicing designer doing different things. So for example, Francisco, who I pointed out in the slides, he was trained he's a Mexican American. He was born in Mexico. He came with his family to this country and he grew up in Texas. He went to architecture school, became an architect, but that wasn't quite what he wanted to do. So he became a graphic designer. He's an incredibly talented graphic designer. But he also took his architecture training and he began to study and to design interiors. And he teaches in our regular college program. All of the teachers teach in the college program, but our school's a little unusual because the teachers don't just teach. They're not full-time teachers. they're all designers for their sort of real job. They're interior designers, they're artists, they're historians, they're practicing architects, and they bring that kind of wealth of knowledge into the classroom. If you're somebody, or Alexia, if you're somebody who already has a head start on technology and you've been using AutoCAD or other kinds of drawing technologies, you'll be allowed to use those, and in fact encouraged to use those in your summer projects. If you don't have that background, it's no problem at all, because lots of people come in and they want to hand draw, or they do hand draw. It's all about your own self-expression and finding your vision, I think, in an applied way with a real project.
I heard you talking about the way that we don't have to be really good at drawing, because for instance, I'm not good at drawing, but for example, I would do really easily a collage or something of pictures and textures and like that. I'm not really good at drawing at all.
Don't worry. That's what I say to everybody. Don't worry. You either will teach it to you, or you will only get better. And for people, there are lots of people that have a vision, but they can't express it through drawing, hand drawing. When they start learning technology, it becomes a way for them to express themselves. So design, I once saw somebody do the most amazing presentation of an apartment design, and it was all done in collage. So he didn't draw anything, which was kind of amazing, but it was beautiful. So there's, it's a creative field, and you shouldn't worry about that at all. Don't.
Breakout room is gonna close. Not
Okay.
to cut you off, Ellen. It's gonna close in a couple seconds, so I didn't want you to be cut off.
In mid-sentence, like usual.
All right, it's gonna close in 60 seconds, and everyone will be joined back to the meeting.
Thank you. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you too, and thank you for the time. And you are really kind. I was very scared of this part of drawing, but it's really nice.